Hello and welcome to this edition of Piedmont Business Live. I'm your host, Ken Morrison, and today we're talking with Steve McRae of Stephen C. McRae, PA Law Firm. Did I get that right?
You did indeed. That's exactly right.
Steve, thanks for being with us today.
Absolutely a pleasure. Thank you.
First of all, tell me a bit about your personal background, your family, your practice, that sort of thing.
Sure. Well, I'm a native of North Carolina, as is my wife. I'm from Cumberland County, Fayetteville. She's from Kannapolis, which is just north of Charlotte. It's a mill town. We met as undergraduates at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. We got married in between my first and second year of law school at Wake Forest University. We have 3 children, Bruce, Flora, and Scott, and they are ages 11, 7, and 3. Our oldest is a 6th grader at Graham Middle School, and middle child is at South Graham, and our youngest is in the play school program at Graham Presbyterian Church.
And did you go to law school at UNC?
No. I was an undergraduate at Carolina and was a law student at Wake Forest University.
Wake Forest, okay. So tell me, what type of law do you practice?
Well, as a solo practitioner in Graham, it tends to be a variety. Primarily, I would describe it as a litigation-based practice, and within that subset, generally speaking, civil litigation. So when citizens have disputes with one another, they have the opportunity to take their case to court if they're not able to work it out otherwise. Hopefully we can help them through that process. Hopefully we can help them resolve their case without having to resort to litigation, but sometimes it's just not to be helped. So in the event that you're in one of those situations and you find yourself in the civil justice system, that's a lot of what I do. Within that civil litigation subset, I tend to do a lot of family law. That's probably about 80% of what I do. It's just what my reputation in the community was billed as. And when the phone rings, just from a volume point of view, that's typically the type of work folks are looking for.
Okay. So describe to me your firm and its location.
Well, as I said before, it's a solo practice. So we're located in Graham, North Carolina, which is the county seat. It's convenient to court. I find it convenient. My family lives in Graham. We've had a very good life here in Alamance County as well as in Graham. So yeah, as I said, we're right on 85-40, and it's a solo practice in Graham.
Okay. So why did you choose to come to Alamance County to practice law?
That's a good question, Ken. I was referred, when I came to Alamance County, I didn't originally come here as a solo practitioner. I started as an associate attorney with a law firm in Burlington. And an attorney there had a relationship with Professor Suzanne Reynolds, with whom I worked very closely at Wake Forest University through their law school. And so when I graduated from law school, she had asked me to look into practicing with this particular firm in Alamance County. And so I came and did an interview and liked the location. It was convenient to my home and my wife's home as well. And we certainly wanted to stay in North Carolina. That's where all of our families are typically. So that's how we came to Alamance County.
So how does operating as a solo practitioner impact your relationship with clients?
Well, I think it makes me very responsive to clients, very, very accountable to clients. I like to think my clients have the assurance of knowing that when they retain me to work on their case, that I am personally doing their work, that it's not an associate attorney of mine or a case handler or a paralegal or some type of support staff. When the phone rings, I answer it. If a client needs to talk to me, typically I would say, and I think my clients would agree with this, they are able to get a response from me personally, because I'm the guy that's doing the work, and I'm directly accountable to them in that way.
I think that would be very reassuring to your clients, knowing that it is you handling their business rather than it's being passed around the office, so to speak?
I believe it is. I have a wonderful relationship with my clients. I've been able to build an extraordinarily strong client base here, and I do think that a lot of that has to do with the fact that, as I say, as a solo practitioner in Alamance County, that I'm personally responsible and accountable to my clients.
Okay. Well, describe the market for legal services here in Alamance County.
It's competitive, Ken. It's like any other service industry, and particularly I would say in Alamance County when we have law schools at Elon now is a new law school, a relatively new law school, and Central on either end of our county, really generating brand new lawyers every spring when they matriculate. A lot of those new attorneys end up in adjacent counties, including Alamance County, and they open up law practices. And I think especially over the last, I would say, 5 years when there's been some downward economic pressure, you've seen a similar downward economic pressure on pricing legal services. So I wouldn't describe it as a commodity because the attorney that you hire certainly does matter. It's not like buying a loaf of bread. But it certainly is also sensitive to competition from other new attorneys, and it's sensitive to economic factors. So I think that, at least from my perspective, we've been able to grow our client base, I would say especially in the last 18 months. I think we can feel the economy coming back. But yeah, I mean, that's what I would say.
I would imagine that, as it is in a lot of businesses, but especially in the legal field, experience matters a whole lot. So even though you may find another attorney who might be less expensive, he or she being less experienced is going to make a difference when it comes to the process.
I think that that's very true, Ken. And it's not just the experience, but it's also the reputation that you've been able to build, not only amongst the clientele here, but also amongst our colleagues at the bar and also with the judiciary. So when you're in front of a judge or when you're dealing with a colleague on the other side of a case and they have dealt with you and they have a history with you and they know where you're coming from and they know your legal skills and ability, I certainly think that that is really a value-added component that I can bring to a client.
How specifically have you responded to this competitive nature in the legal profession?
Well, as a solo practitioner, I'd say maintaining overhead and just a sensitivity to overhead is important. And I think as a solo practitioner, I know as a solo practitioner, you're able to be very sensitive to maintaining your overhead at an affordable level. So the more efficiently that I'm able to run my law practice, the more efficiently or the more flexibility I would say I have whenever I'm setting a price point for a particular client. So certainly in talking to your client in the context of the initial interview, you have to be sensitive to what their price point is. And again, if you've been able to run your office and your practice efficiently, it gives you some flexibility there in setting prices. You simply don't have to make as much money to pay a large advertising budget or a large support staff structure or things of that nature. And so, as a solo, again, I think it makes me sensitive to that price point. And I also think that looking at your pricing structure or your relationship with clients or the work that you do for a client from a value-added perspective or point of view is important. I think it's something that more and more we've got to do in the legal profession.
So when you say value-added perspective on your legal fees, what exactly do you mean by that?
Well, you have to ask yourself, am I able to earn this fee? So whenever I'm speaking with this client in the context of the initial interview, and we have this conversation with our clients very bluntly and very directly, and I ask them, this is what you can expect, this is what the process is going to look like, this is how much I think it's going to cost, this is based on my experience, this is my best estimate about what your total spend is going to be from the legal services point of view, and this is a reasonable outcome that I think you can expect. And at that point, you as the client have got to make the decision as to whether or not this is a wise investment of your money. And frankly, sometimes I talk to clients in the context of that initial interview, and the answer is no. That they appreciate the frankness with which I approach their case, and also my sensitivity to whether or not this is going to be a wise investment of their money and their time. And as I say, occasionally we decide no, it's not something that's worth pursuing, or not something that I would advise them to pursue, or not the way that I would advise that they spend their time and money, that this simply isn't a case that's worthwhile. And sometimes I talk myself out of fees. But I feel I owe that to my clients on the front end. They've paid me for an initial consult, and it's my obligation and duty to provide them with the very best, not just legal, but also practical advice that I can give them.
And I imagine that pays off in the long run, because they realize that you're not just trying to sell them to pad your pocket, but you are really truly advising for their best interest.
I think that is absolutely right, Ken. And that's just the way I do it. And as I say, certainly it is true that from time to time you talk yourself out of a fee, but frankly, I would rather have that type of relationship with my clients, where the clients that I have at the end of our legal relationship, at the end of our professional relationship, they're satisfied with what they've been told. They don't feel as if they've been sold a bill of goods, or that they were given a hard sell in the context of an initial consultation. It simply is worth it to me to have a satisfied client base long-term, as opposed to being able to chase, some short-term money by giving some clients what may not have been the very best advice at the outset of that attorney-client relationship.
Well, one last question. What do you find most rewarding about your practice and about being an attorney here?
That's another good question, Ken. I like helping people. Honestly, if there were a way I could do this without having to worry about overhead or fees or being paid, I would still do it. The satisfaction, we talked about it a moment ago in the context of the initial consult. When you have someone who's never been engaged with the legal system before, that this is the first time they're in trouble and they feel like they're in bad trouble, they are confused, they have a lot of questions, they're scared, and you can sit them down in the context of that initial consult and give them a roadmap and make it feel for them less daunting and less intimidating, and look them in the eye and let them know that it will be okay. And at the end of that conversation, have them stand up and shake your hand and tell you, I feel a lot better. When I sat down, I was very scared. I was concerned with what was going to happen. I've never done any of this before, but what you said makes sense, and I like the game plan that you and I have been able to develop together. That is probably the most satisfying aspect of practicing law.
Well, Steve, thank you very much for being on Piedmont Business Live today.
Absolutely. Pleasure.
And if you want to know more about Steve McRae and his law firm, then please visit the website at the bottom of this page or at the end of this video. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on Piedmont Business Live.